Hi, I'm Karen O'Hanlon, Education Director here at the Chance Theater. In 2015, the Chance Theater partnered with Arts Orange County, Veterans First, and the California Arts Council to begin a veterans storytelling program. This program was inspired by the Chance Theater's Speak Up program that helps Orange County teens share their stories and create an original play. We knew that by creating a safe, judgment-free place for participants to share their experience while providing the skills and a platform to bring their truth to an audience, that they would leave empowered. What we did not know at the time was the impact this program would have in our community, both on and off the stage. Since that first program 5 years ago, we have seen 7 diverse groups perform here at the Chance Theater: Heroes Hall, Segerstrom Center Veterans Day celebrations, Bowers Museum, and most recently at the Nixon Library. From Veterans Initiative to Voices to Veterans Speak Up, our community has recognized the power of this program with their immense support. This March, when a pandemic forced us all to stay home, the community of vets who met through this program met weekly over Zoom to offer support and catch up. As we embarked on starting this new program, I was incredibly moved by the bonds made in the past. And while the new session brought new participants to join some familiar faces, we quickly realized that this year would have to look much different than our live performances of the past. But this also provides us an opportunity to reflect on the impact of this program while giving you, the audience, an inside look. Throughout this presentation, I will share what makes this program unique and the journey we take together for the 6 weeks that lead up to our performance.
Job in the Air Force. I was an airborne voice intercept specialist. The Air Force sent me to 3 language schools. So here you got an Irishman that speaks Indonesian, Vietnamese, and Hebrew, mazel tov, and ended up going to Japan, Okinawa, Da Nang, on temporary duty to Da Nang, flying over the Gulf of Tonkin, listening in. My job was listening in to the North Vietnamese Air Force. And then on my second tour, when I went to Washington for Hebrew school, I was assigned to 2.5 years of very difficult duty in Athens, Greece.
22 years active duty, 8 years enlisted, OCS, the rest of it commissioned. And I retired in 1979. And once I stepped right out of, actually my next job out of retirement was just changing suits, because I was in air defense for 17 of my years. And my next 2 civilian assignments were 4 years with Raytheon and then 11 years with Hughes Aircraft. And it was all about missiles and aircraft. So I stayed in that genre for until I was 56, and that's when I retired for the second time. So, and then the Chance Theater came about, about 4 years ago to me. And I like the whole idea of telling the story. Looking forward to doing it again.
That was the last year of the draft, 1972. My middle brother had served in the Army. So one of my brothers, the oldest, was Navy. He was in Japan. The other one was Army in Germany. And I went and joined the Air Force because I've always loved airplanes.
November 22nd, 1963, President John Kennedy, who I shook hands with fresh out of high school when I was in Los Angeles in 1960, he was outside there getting into his car to go to give his national acceptance speech for his nomination for President of the United States in downtown Los Angeles. I worked there my summer after high school and shook hands with him, and he was assassinated. So I lost my president that I loved, and I lost my first love, who I loved, and I lost my mother, who I loved. And I said, there's a lot happening in this world that I don't know about. And I need to get out there and see what's real and what isn't for myself. And I think the military, probably the Army, is probably going to be able to do that. And right when I came open for that, the Pentagon opened up a 2-year program for volunteers to the Army instead of 3 years. And said, well, I think that would work for me. And I knew this is 1964. Vietnam hadn't really cranked up yet. I said, but even if I were to go in, I think Vietnam would probably crank up. But I'm still open for that too.
My granddad was a West Point grad. My dad was a West Point grad. And my granddad on my mother's side was a Naval Academy officer. And that's all I ever wanted to do. I was brought up on, aside from War II, was brought up on military installations with a bunch of other kids the same way. And it was perfectly natural for me anyway. That's all I wanted to do. That's all I wanted to do. I mean, my dad said, I will bust my hump to send you to any school that you want, or you can get in. And I told him early on, I was 15. I said, no, I want to go to West Point.
I went to junior college and I dropped out, went to work, dropped out, went to work. I just couldn't find my way until Uncle Sam found my way for me. In the beginning of 1969, I got drafted like a lot of guys did.
I think the turning point for me was when Brother Augustine called me into his office and he said, Mr. Lopez, don't even bother sitting down. I'm going to tell you like it is. And I quote, Mr. Lopez, you are so darn dumb that you'll never make it in college, unquote. And I said, okay. And at that time, we were taught not to be disrespectful of authority. And so I said, okay. So I went home and I told my mom, Mom, I love you, but I'm going to join the Marine Corps. And she goes, no, you're not. I said, Mom, I love you, but I'm going. And I told her why. And so she goes, if you want to go that badly, let's go. So we went to the recruiter's office, downtown LA on Broadway. And I walked into the recruiter's office and I said to the sergeant, Sergeant, I want three things from you. I want to join the Marine Corps. I want to go with the infantry, and I want to go to Vietnam. Didn't even know where Vietnam was at. I just wanted to go there.
What do you see when you see me?
A hero,
A soldier?
a warrior, a veteran.
Going back 5 years, I got the call from Deanna Tate about someone coming to speak. Warren, could you get a meeting going? I said, I get all the guys going, yeah. So everyone showed up. You remember when you came to the meeting and I introduced you, you gave your spiel, everyone liked it. And you were taking names on the clipboard, I never forget. And then you asked me about my name and I said, oh no. And I was dead serious. I said, hey, let these young guys go, let them do their thing and I'm good. And then you kind of challenged me and you know, us alpha males, you know, oh, a challenge? So I said, okay, I'll come to the first meeting just to see. And little did I know you were baiting me in. And when I tell the story to this day, it resonates because what it meant. It wasn't just going on stage, but it was overcoming some fears. I'm not a public speaker. When you speak from your heart, I think it resonates. And going on stage for the first time, I remember how emotional many of us were telling some of our stories. And then it snowballed from there. And, you know, I still speak to this day. Matter of fact, just 3 weeks ago, Veterans Day, I spoke at the Elks Lodge and about 125 or so there, the new building there in, I guess it's Tustin or Santa Ana, actually Santa Ana. And we were dedicating this to the World War II veterans. So I sat at a table with gentlemen who were 90, 95, 100 years old. And I was like a little kid when I looked at these guys. And then I was one of the speakers. And again, I couldn't help, got a little emotional to be around such men of honor that I didn't even see myself as a veteran, as opposed to looking up to them as you know, veterans.
Then, because I didn't know anything about it. And when we first met upstairs with Karen, she had another fellow with her and they started explaining their vision. And there was about 8 or 10 of us that showed up and it boiled down to 7. This is part of what it looks like way back then. And yeah, there were about 7 of us down in here. And we gave it this. That's how I came to know about Heroes Hall, and that's where my first presentation was. And we presented to over 225 people, and it was SRO, and that was in October, and it was cold. but nobody left.
In the beginning of Gulf War I in 1990, the morning after our initial assault into Iraq, protesters were already starting to form in the streets of San Francisco, Los Angeles, and several other California cities. Irate and disgusted at the thought of what a terrible effect this might have upon the innocent men and women currently serving in our armed forces, I sat down and in just a few minutes penned the poem, Soldier's Lament. Much to my pleasant surprise, the instant nationwide backlash against these demonstrations shut them down within 2 days, and the nation rose in an almost unified voice supporting our men and women in uniform. For the first time in 20 years, I felt vindicated and exonerated for crimes I had never committed. Since then, I have never once felt that age-old stigma, first foisted upon me as I stepped off the boat from Da Nang. I later faxed my poem to my congressman, B1 Bob Dornan, who read it on the floor of Congress and into the congressional record. Perhaps now it can help educate another generation of American citizens on the role that a foot soldier plays in war as opposed to that of the politician.
We all told stories about there I was. So that probably mellowed the problems. I had some bad dreams when I came back from my second tour, but they thank God they went away. They went away, and I've not had a difficulty since, and I thank God for that. I keep in touch with guys like Gary and other career fighter pilots that I really grew up with, starting at age 22, and that sharing, I guess, is a way of getting rid of some of the tension.
I don't think I ever spoke at all about my experience until I got involved with the Vietnam veterans. No, I never told my family my story, partly because what I did was top secret. And part of it was I knew my mother, from what I heard after, agonized almost nightly. She cried while I was in Vietnam. And I figured it probably was better not to talk about it. And the other thing that happened, of course, is that I didn't live at home. When I came back to the States, I actually moved in with a fellow Air Force person, and we both went to the University of Massachusetts. And so I wasn't at home. And so I didn't see my family that much. But no, I never talked about it.
I don't talk to my wife about my PTSD. We've been together for almost 8 years. I've known her for almost 10. Only little bits leak out every so often. I don't want to burden her, and I don't want to reopen those wounds. For some, talking about it and going to group therapy helps. It hasn't for me. For me, it's easier just to hide it away and not relive it. It's hard to think about what I saw. I hate what I saw. I spent months in the dark drinking because of what I saw. I cursed our government for the things I saw. Times I wish I were dead. You know why then? Not me. It's gotten a little easier over time. It's been 10 years. And those images are as real and vibrant as any I've had in my life.
The sergeant said to me, "Private, you're going to be the last one out of the squad bay, and you got to make sure everything's squared away." And I go, "Yes, sir." So they blew the whistle. Everybody had to run out to the formation. So I looked to my left, and I looked to my right. Everybody was gone. So I ran out to formation. but I didn't know that there were 2 Marines outside the barracks to clean some of the mops. And then when they came in, they didn't put him into the room nicely. They just threw him in there because they were in a hurry. So the drill instructor came out to me at the rifle range and he goes, "Private, because of you, we failed a colonel's inspection." I was really baffled. I said, "Sir, I didn't know what you're talking about, sir." When I left, it was good. Anyway, when we got back to squad bay, before I even put my rifle down, he took me into the shower stall and he beat the hell out of me before I even put my rifle down. And then they had blanket parties afterwards. The recruits that were the favor of the drill instructors were going to come out to get me to beat the hell out of me. And what they do is they take the mattress off the springs, they tie you down with the belts, and then they beat you hell out of you with soap and socks. And what's interesting is there were 4 Marines that I was pretty tight with from different parts of the United States. And they literally got their rifles and they sat around my bunk and they didn't let anybody touch me. They left me alone that night. But they were going to get me next. And these 4 guys, I mean, I knew they were in platoon, but I didn't know them that well. They came around me and they just had their rifles and they said, "Before they get to you, they're going to get to us first."
First night I'm there, I hadn't even had a chance to, they showed me where I was going to bunk underneath a culvert and stuff. And they gave me a sergeant to show me what the mess hall was. And you were going to do KP that night. The last thing you want to do is KP. The first night I'm there. So he's walking me to the mess tent and he goes, of course, he was at E6. He was about ready to go home in another couple of weeks. And so, he's in front of the first sergeant going, "Yes, sir. Yes, Sarge. No, I'll take him over there." But as we're walking to the tent, he starts walking that nice slide as he's walking. Say, man, where you from, man?" And I told him, I'm from Los Angeles." "You from Hollywood?" And I says, "Well, yeah, pretty close to Hollywood." "All right, Hollywood." So he starts calling me Hollywood, right? And he gets me to the mess tent and he goes, "Hey, Sarge." And the mess sergeant comes out and he goes, "I got Hollywood here that's going to pull KP duty. You just got in country." And with my luck, the mess sergeant is a Latino. Okay, the first Latino I've seen when I got there, he's Latino. And of course he goes, "Okay, I got it. All right, man, you're going to be with him and everything's going to be right."
And I had my first tour. I had 2 tours. First tour was at Cam Bay. And that location in the middle of Vietnam allowed us to range for all the way from 2 Corps down to 4 Corps. Close air support for a lot of it. Some work in Laos. And I had Army classmates. I'm a West Pointer 57. I had Army classmates on the ground, and that made it very, very meaningful.
The discipline made the Air Force seem so easy. It was unbelievable because what we went through. I mean, when you figure we couldn't speak from 7:30 at night to 7:30 in the morning, and being in a room with 100 guys, not being able to talk would drive you crazy. But anyways, when I got to the Air Force, because the seminary made us participate in all sports, including ice skating in the winter, I was in pretty good shape and didn't mind the physicality of the training at all. As a matter of fact, the discipline I got in the seminary really helped me a lot to get through the basic training. I really had no problems. The worst part of it was we were in Texas, Lackland Air Force Base, Texas in July and August. And when it got over 100 degrees, they put a red flag up and we didn't have to march. So we had some days where we were able to avoid marching, but I had no problem at all with the basic training.
From there, we took a blue bus that bore a striking resemblance to a prison bus to Lackland Air Force Base. We passed through the base gates and stopped. The door opens and this creature in a uniform and Smokey the Bear hat starts screaming at me incomprehensibly outside my seat window. "Get the fuck off my bus!" Well, welcome to basic training, bro.
I arrived to my basic training on a cattle truck. That's right, the same thing that they used to haul around cattle. I'll never forget the sound of the screeching brakes. Then, a more annoying sound, the voice of the drill sergeant. "Privates, life as you know it is over." That's what I thought. What the fuck did I just sign up for?
I was in Vietnam for sure, and I felt like a 5-year-old on the
University of Kentucky. A soldier directed me to my headquarters, the 57th Cavalry. And there was a large tent with the flaps open. And I went in and introduced myself, and the company clerk said, "Oh, Sandoval, we've been waiting for you." Like they were really waiting for me. And I was assigned to Charlie Company, 1st Platoon. And I asked them if I'd be going out, and they said, "Hey, you're lucky. Your company's getting supplied tomorrow. You're going out tomorrow." And I also found out that I had KP duty that night. Yeah. Great. KP. You know how much I tried to get out of doing that in the stateside? First night there, KP.
Certain rank in the military, in the Air Force, in flying, if there was a crash, an airplane crash, I've been to 3 or 4 sites where you put a hazmat suit on and a bag, you go out and pick up pieces of a fire, of a crashed airplane. So you're picking up boots, you know, over in Germany, I picked up boots, and here's a guy's helmet, and you know, you're seeing all these things. The one I think most people might be able to relate to was the great Dean Martin. He had a son who we called him Dino. He was a fighter pilot at March Air Force Base, and I was flying with him the day he ran into the San Gregorian Mountains at 450 miles an hour, and his airplane disintegrated. And there was so much fog, we couldn't do anything that evening. So the next morning, we were out picking up pieces of his body, of the airplane, and things of this nature.
The commanding officer for our 7th Cavalry Regiment was Hal Moore. One of the other things that Hal Moore wanted me to do was to be his photographer for the battalion, because the man I was replacing for that job was leaving. His 2 years in the service was over with, and he was a professional photographer in Jamaica, and he was excellent. And so he trained me in all the things I'm supposed to be doing for the colonel, for the commanding officer, but also how to take photographs, how to frame them. And I had a Brownie camera, and finally we were starting to get half frame and full frame slide cameras, the kinds of things that this professional photographer used. And so it came right at the right time. And so I was blessed to have the opportunity to take a lot of pictures where I would not normally have had the opportunity. And the opportunity was there for a lot of history. And I took about 1,000 slides. The Colonel Hal Moore allowed me closer to him than the officers. Come on in, Ron.
At Cameron, we had pre-planned missions, and then we had an alert facility for on-call. And we had 2 airplanes on 5-minute alert, 2 on 15. One airplane had 6 500-pound high-drag bombs and a 20-millimeter cannon, and the other had 4 cans of napalm and a 20-millimeter cannon. We got scrambled one day, and I was the lead, and I had the bombs, and we got to the target area, checked in with the forward air controller, and he was working a flight of F-100s. There was a special forces camp out there under siege. And he said, I can only give you one run-in heading because of hazards and so forth. But the main hazard is the bad guys have a 14.7 millimeter anti-aircraft gun, and it looks like they're about to get the lead. That was really encouraging. And so he said, okay, the Huns came off the target, and he said, okay, I'm ready for you guys, and I want the bombs first. So my wingman, Tom Asselone, and Carl Parlatore in the back seat rolled in to deliver high-drag 500-pound bombs. And delivers about 500 knots at about 200 feet. And so in they went, and I was orbiting over the top, and I watched them, and the enemy had hit him in the bomb, and the bomb went what we call low order. It wasn't a huge explosion, but it was enough to blow his wing off. And at 500 knots, he started corkscrewing, and all of a sudden I see 2 chutes pop. And so I got on guard channel along with the Ford air controller, and we mayday, mayday, mayday. And pretty soon, every Army helicopter in the region was inbound.
We had our own TET. We had the second TET, the 69 TET. And of course, that was in, I think it was in earlier mid-February. But I was only commanding officer for about 3 weeks, and it hit. Now I had a company of about 60 people. The base camp was attacked, and the Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese Army had 3 missions. One mission was to take out the aircraft and cripple the 25th Division Aviation, and that was very successful. They did that with Samper attacks and took out 9 of the 16 helicopters.
Wow.
Got Chinooks. And of course, without a Chinook, there goes your logistics. And they were smart people. What they were looking for. The second one was the TOC, the Tactical Operations Center. Now that's where I got involved, and my men and I we got engaged in that situation, and I had no training as a commanding officer of an infantry company, but I did know the territory well enough because I'd walk back and forth from the TOC from my area, trying to familiarize myself with the whole locations, and I knew nobody was would be in crossfire. So we engaged, and we were quite successful in that one. So they failed on that one.
We were walking towards the village online, and I'm not firing my weapon because I don't see enemy. I just see small babies, old ladies, and old men in the village. Sorry. We get into the village, and I'm scared shitless. I don't see enemy. I just see small babies and some old lady men, old men running around. So the Marines around me are starting to zip up the village. They're bringing up the grass huts. So I'm walking by this grass hut, and I see an old man. An old lady and 2 small babies. I don't know, Karen, have you ever seen death? But they were literally white, and their eyes were literally round. That's how scared they were. I pointed my weapon in there, and I froze. I mean, I just froze. I couldn't force myself to squeeze the trigger. And this Sergeant Irwin, came up to me, and he put the rifle to my head, the temple actually, and he says, "Private, if you don't squeeze the trigger, you're gonna die right here. Nobody will ever know the difference." To the corner of my eye, I could see his face, and I remembered he was looking down the barrel of the weapon. And I believed in my heart and soul that he was going to kill me. I really believed it in my heart and soul. To this day, I still believe it. I fired 20 rounds into that hooch, killing all 4 people. Body parts flying all over. I was full of blood from all the body parts. And then to make sure they were dead, I threw a hand grenade in there. That was my 3rd day in country in Vietnam. And to this day, I have 4 sets of eyes follow me wherever I go. I can't shake it. Can't sleep. The nightmares are bad. I see the 4 sets of eyes. That was my introduction to Vietnam. My 3rd day in country.
As a tunnel rat, at that time I was 120 pounds soaking wet. I was sort of crawl into a tunnel about 3 by 4 and look for the enemy. He gave me a rope, a 45 semi-automatic weapon, and a Zippo lighter. In the Marine Corps, we couldn't afford flashlights. The Army had flashlights. They would put the rope around my waist and they say, "Crawl into the tunnel." I was scared shitless. Mind you, there was no backup. It was just me and the enemy.
I met at the crossroads, I'll put it that way, when I faced homelessness. When I served, we didn't have this thing called PTSD. If you got hurt back then, man up, man up. You don't complain, you don't cry, and you take it all in. But eventually, these things manifest. So it affected my marriage. After 22 years of marriage, I was divorced. And shortly thereafter, I found myself in a homeless situation, literally sleeping in the car. And with my bad back, I got to the point where I couldn't take it. You're sick and tired of being sick and tired. And somewhere I kept saying, well, why don't you get help? And I said, well, I'll work it out. I'll work it out. I'll work it out. But I could not work it out. So I finally went to the VA in Long Beach. And first thing they did was order all my records. And then they looked at them and thought, how come you didn't apply for disability? And I didn't understand. And there was a gentleman, a lawyer, veteran, who looked at my records and he applied for me. And next you know, I was considered a disabled veteran.
So I was unique in that I had two homecomings because when I reenlisted, I came back to the United States from Okinawa to Washington, D.C. for language school for my third language, which was Hebrew. And our school was in downtown Washington, D.C., right off DuPont Circle. And of course, that was when this was 1970. I was actually in Washington when the Kent State shooting and the protesters were all over DC. So what we had to do was we all went to school in civilian clothes. We were bused basically from Arlington, where the barracks were. Believe it or not, we used to live at Arlington Cemetery. That's where the barracks were at Fort Myers. And then they bus us to the school just to keep us safe, so that we would not be walking around Washington, D.C. because we were easy to pick out because of our military haircuts, of course. So we were sort of like incognito. The second homecoming was in 1973 when I came back from Athens, and I went right to the University of Massachusetts. I never encountered any kind of protest. As a matter of fact, the University of Massachusetts was well known for its treatment of veterans. Not only did I have free tuition, but I got a stipend for books. They also gave me a job in the vice president's office. So by then, I think the war had really petered out, so to speak, that the protesters, I didn't encounter any at the university.
This is Emmy night in the Regional TV Emmy Awards ceremony in Las Vegas in 2019. PBS had asked me to be part of a special TV event that they were having, where they would be interviewing 3 veterans, living history, their stories, like we're talking about right now. Only this was put together as part of a half-hour special called Vietnam Speaks, okay? Almost copying Chance Theater, frankly. And the whole idea was exactly the same. I started out, I'm followed by by a relative of the Emmy-winning producer, who happens to be a reverend, a Black reverend, Black American. Really, really, really keen guy. And then it ends with our third one, who is Pete Young, who is the director of the Riverside National Cemetery. So you're talking about really interesting people and interesting stories. And some of the stories that was left in the half hour are some of the stories that I tell with you right now, including, and most especially, I was told, the one about my mother coming from beyond the physical universe to comfort me, saying that to have no fear, Ron, for you will survive this war and you'll do so without having to fire a shot.
Yes.
You know, is proof, as I'm in the middle of a valley of hate, that love is more powerful than hate. For a loving mother to come to his son in his greatest need to know something. And with her love showers him with an affirmation like that, is very, very moving. And it's part of the package that was left in Vietnam Speaks. And you're looking at an Emmy for my telling my mother's story.
Well, all my family has suffered through PTSD, with me being 100% PTSD. They all have suffered. And for a while there, they couldn't understand why I was the way I was. And they thought it was my being a cop, being my law enforcement issue, but no, deeper than that, it was my PTSD that I realized later on in my life that I had and I had to deal with. But it's funny that when I was a cop, I didn't suffer the PTSD because I'm an adrenaline junkie, and I didn't see any difference between the jungles of Vietnam and the jungles of LA when I worked the riots and whatnot in LA. So PTSD didn't really affect me until after I retired. Then it really hit me pretty hard. And my wife has been with me ever since, and she knows everything about me in terms of my experiences. And I've always told her, this is what I'm all about. So she appreciated that.
And she'd mentioned too that, maybe just to me privately, but she had said, I knew the boy that went to Vietnam.
Yeah, we were together since we were freshmen in high school.
Yeah.
And she said, before you went in, you were kind, loving, caring, laughing, joking. When you came back, you were completely different. You were just stone cold, brutal. And I didn't realize it until after she really hit me with it. I realized that it was just not me suffering from the PTSD, it was my family. And that's what really affected me, man, the way my family had endured a lot of this stuff. And, I try to make up for it by being more open and being more resilient in terms of dealing with all the PTSD that we go through. And I'm better now. I'm not perfect, but I'm better.
In fact, Rudy, another friend of mine, tells me, you're not home yet. He tells me, he'll tell me for a lot of different reasons that people can tell you, welcome home. And he says, I'll tell you, welcome home, Tommy. But he says, you're not home yet. For me, that was the moment that Tommy Sandoval, the 19-year-old guy, got up and walked away from that mess. And it's like inside you're going, it's metaphoric, but inside you're going, something about you is gone, and there's a new reality. That your life is put on the line, and you will never. I think I mentioned this to David yesterday. You'll never be the same. You'll never be the same person. That little innocent guy that got over it thought he was trained for something, but all it took was the first couple of rounds. Seen individuals get injured, and that you're not, from that point on, you're never the same guy anymore. And that guy is not the same guy that got there yesterday, and he's not the same guy that got drafted, several months before that. And it's just one of those things that you start to learn to take care of yourself, to take care of others.
What happened to that boy that went to war? He didn't come home. I didn't know if he did. And I've been waiting for him for a long, long time. I'm not even sure I'd recognize him after all these years. The family thought he came home, but it wasn't him. He disappeared after the first firefight in the Nam. Just up and left me that afternoon. Just walked away in the confusion. No explanation, no questions asked. Just gone. And frankly, I don't know what I'd do if I saw him today. Probably kick him in the ass for meeting me like that. But I came back in his place. A 21-year-old trained weapons expert and killer. You try putting that on a resume and a job interview. And those of us that physically survived the Nam were dramatically changed, emotionally and psychologically. Boy. The saying goes, some things in life can't be fixed. They can only be carried.
I guess I've kind of developed the capability of reading an audience, and I can tell when they're going to react. You gave me some clues on how to stop and hold and wait for an anticipated reaction and then hit them with a zinger. So I kind of write my stories based on that. And I watch the people's faces. I try to look at them all the time I'm talking. I try to avoid, if I possibly can, avoid reading. The very first time we ever did this, when I was standing up holding on to the imitation rods in officer candidate school, I got a roaring laugh out of the joke. And that's, well, look at there. You know, eat your heart out, Abbott and Costello. I broke the code. So I kind of worked that into everything I've done since then.
Yeah, you were big on that about, you know, expressing ourselves. And I know I was guilty of the quote unquote reading the script, but I think it was important to really tell it in your own words. I found out that has the best, and that's really what I carried from the whole chance experience. Just recently, when I was speaking at the Elks Lodge, you know, without trying, you know, I'll be trying to stay away from politics, and they're a conservative group, and usually the assumption is when people see me that well, he's black, he probably voted for Obama. You know, these are assumptions, and I understand it. And so I was even asked, would I have any problem speaking to a Republican group, the Elks Lodge, on Veterans Day? I said no, because I'm not here to talk about a Republican or Democrat. I'm here to talk about veterans. So I go up there and I didn't have a script. So I basically took what I took, you know, what you taught us at Chance. I took pretty much, that's in here. And I got up to the podium and took a deep breath. I looked out, I thanked everyone for coming out this evening, about 125 folks. And when I was done, some ladies came up and people want to take pictures. And some lady said, "You made me cry." I didn't mean to, you know.
Every single bit of it were blessings, because we all have our journeys. We all have our journeys. God loves us so much that he created, as I have found, that he created his plan for our life long before he ever created the physical universe. And that is absolutely true in my case. I can verify that, and the things that I've seen and been able to share my heart because of it with a lot of people, students in school, et cetera, has been a total blessing. In fact, I would say my life has been a total blessing. Motive for going to Chance was to be in the program and see how they formed stories, or even if they formed stories, you know, that could be of use, and what effect it would have on my fellow soldiers and myself, because no matter what, we are hosts of PTSD when you go into very, very difficult circumstances or dangerous. And I was very pleased to see that all these things that I had learned over the years and in Vietnam was very delicately and very insightfully put together in a script put together by Karen Hanlon, our director. We listened to our stories for 6 weeks and put them together in a reading play, in which we have our script put before us and we interchange with what she has put together in writing as being our stories. And it not only was entertaining to an audience, but it was healing for us, each one of us, to very strong degrees. And as I look back on it, we aren't the same after the play is over with. We're better. We really, 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 really have experienced a catharsis, a readiness to have people hear us finally about our experiences, and we get it out, because for 50 plus years, no one wanted to hear us, Vietnam veterans, because we were painted by the media as being the enemy we were fighting, and erroneously. And And I also found that the audience that came up to us after the play was over with thanked us and shared. Some of them shared with me, particularly that they had healed too, because after all, in these last 50 plus years, it's been rough for Americans. It's been a rough existence ever since and during the Vietnam War, because of not only the circumstance itself, but because of the way it was misreported to the American people and put the veterans in an incorrect bad light. And that kind of misreporting through media has not only continued, it's gotten worse. And people are finally now coming to see that. And so the value of the Chance Theater in the way it helps us veterans express our feelings and get out and heal PTSD connects with an audience that is eager to hear us and needs to hear us. So the Chance Theater is, and I'm speaking from direct experience, and I've done this play a couple of times, is vital to the needs of our populace, of our people. And we are in a time where perhaps even more than you would suppose depends on it.
I just think this program is so valuable because of the fact that we do have an audience that is able to get the real experience of what it was like to be in Vietnam and what it was like for us and how it impacted us as people. And when we came home and how it affected our lives as a whole. And I don't know if the history books tell the real story. From what I hear, there's hardly anything in recent history books about the war. But I think people need to know. I think the youth today need to know what we did, why we did it, and why the outcome was the way it was, as Fred talked about. And I think it's important that we tell our stories, and we have an audience for that. So we really thank the Chance for giving us that opportunity.
We veterans come home alone, and all of a sudden in your meetings, with your direction and your openness to listening to us, we were able to share ourselves out there, and then we could unify ourselves with other veterans. And it became a different reality, a true reality. It's one that we could re-experience in a new way, meaning we could connect with one another with what we learned and the reality of what we saw and have other people agree with it. And that was a big deal because we know what the world's like out there because we were there. And when we come home and want to tell people about it, they don't want to hear about it. And that's to their detriment because now they're finding out what we've known all along, that it's a tough world out there and there's hate out there and there are people out there who hate the free for being free. And we're right in the middle of it right now. So this is not new news to us, but years ago when we were with you, Karen, we were able to connect with that kind of reality and be strengthened by it. And that gave us self-confidence to continue it. And you nurtured us and guided us in that journey. And it was the beginning of the rest of our lives for us. That's how important it was.
You told the story about what had happened to you when you came out in our second show. There was a teenage boy in the audience who was so impacted by your stories.
And that's when the mother brought the girl up, and she was the head of her Gay Straight Alliance in her high school. Mm-hmm. And I told her, I thanked her for what she's doing for the community, for the gay community. And the mother was very proud of her daughter. That moved me a lot.
Yeah. So I remember the impact that those stories had on some of the younger kids.
I began to realize that the Janus of transition was making an appearance. I was coming to terms with what I had been denying for years. I was a gay man. One of my crew had come out to me and we shared our hopes, dreams, and desires, but never acted up. Then I realized I was not alone. I was beginning to relax now that my military career was coming to an end. But one night after a party and having too much to drink, I ended up in bed with one of my senior crew members. 2 days later, 2 men in suits knocked on my door and asked me to accompany them to the local office of the DSI, Department of Special Investigations. I was interrogated because someone had reported having a homosexual relationship with me.
I like people to know the value of military service. And when asked the question, would you like to talk to somebody about it? I'm all for that. I just, that's what we do at Freedom Committee, is talk to kids about the service. But for them to get something, what we like them to know from here is like I said, the value of the military service, which to me, it's twofold. Well, actually, it's threefold. Regardless of which topic you select, you're going to end up with a disciplined organization and, of course, an appreciation for your fellow veterans and your country. But the other one is that the benefits after you get out are amazing. Just like my granddaughter, who's just here, she's going to full-time nursing school and she isn't paying a dime. So that's really worked out good for her. She spent 8 years in the Air Force. Her brother is now on his 11th year. He's an E7. He's chief petty officer in Florida, and that's the other one. That's, you got the second, which is the value of the system towards your education or to other benefits, and then you have the long-term value to the retiree, which I can attest to, believe me.
The word is reality and clarity. Getting out into the world, the service sends you out there and you get to see for yourself what is really real out there and what isn't, as opposed to having people tell you what the world is like and what really counts, like you see on television or through media. In my case, the Vietnam War, at the very beginning when I was there and came back, I found that the Vietnam War itself was being misreported. And in a very short time was depicting we who were fighting for the freedom of others against advancing communism were cast as the very evil enemy that we were fighting. And this was happening on our American TV. So I got to see it firsthand. I got to see it in a valley of death in the very first major battle of the Vietnam War. And I thank God that I was there and that I survived and that I can come back and share what I learned there firsthand, carrying our bloodied, dead and wounded from helicopter to helicopter and seeing for myself that there really is such a thing as hate in this world. There really, truly is. And that there really are people out there in this world who hate the free for being free. And what are we? We are the free. And that message is paramount. That's defined me for the rest of my life. And I thank God for my military service.
Why am I here? I'm only comfortable around other veterans. I mean, veterans understand me, and I can be me. I'm here to share my story.
I'm here to tell my story. One I've never shared publicly.
I'm here out of curiosity and a desire to pass on some insight and real experiences.
I'm here to tell you the truth I have been told, not to tell.
I'm here to give voice to all the wives, mothers, and families who are also living with the scars of war.
After a 22-year career, both enlisted and commissioned in the military, I'm here to share my story.
As you can see, some of these stories were quite difficult to share and difficult to hear, but it has been the greatest privilege of my life to be in the room with these heroes, having them enlighten and educate me. I'd like to thank the Chance Theater for working tirelessly to make this program happen. I'd like to thank our major funders, California Arts Council and Boeing Employee Community Fund, with additional funding from the Anaheim Community Foundation and numerous individuals who have supported the Education and Outreach Fund. And of course, you, by being here with an open heart and mind. Thank you so much. And I look forward to our next session of Veterans Speak Up, hopefully in person. Happy holidays, everyone.